The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here today, and I'm with Jeff Standridge. Jeff, welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Jeff, so you are a former, back in the day a little bit, VP of Axiom Corporation. You've also established startup businesses in multiple continents. You've been interviewed and quoted in places like the Wall Street Journal, HR Magazine, many other publications in the media. And before starting your business, you actually served in the National Guard and you were a paramedic.
That's right.
Today, right, you lead multiple teams in different businesses that you're involved in. You're a consultant, you're an investor, you're a professor, and you are an author. So the question I have right off the bat is, were you always a high performer and focused on getting a lot done?
You know, I'm a middle child, and middle children tend to be high performers because they always aspire to live up to the legend set by their older sibling and want to outpace their younger sibling. So there's probably some psychology somewhere in that.
Yeah, I mean, but really, like, if you kind of look back at when you were growing up, is this something that were you always just putting the work in to get stuff done, or?
Yeah, no, putting the work in, yes. So I was a good student, but I wasn't the top of my class. I started working in the third grade, mowing yards. By the sixth grade, I was riding my bicycle into town and pumping gas at the local gas station. By the ninth grade, I was running a full service gas station by myself, welding mufflers on the vehicles, changing brakes, servicing the oil and what have you. So fixing flats. So I've worked my entire life. Spring break and Christmas vacation and summer vacation for me growing up was just an opportunity to work more. I never heard of a spring break trip until I had my own kids and the peer pressure set in. So yeah, I always had the work ethic and always really went after it. Was not always the top academically. As I tell people, I crammed a 4-year degree in almost 6 years. But yeah, I've always worked hard, love working hard, and wasn't until I became probably, I would say, an early adult that I started really accomplishing things in, outside the academic environment.
Where did that come from? I mean, did that come from your parents? Did that come from someone that you met?
I grew up in the country, and, most of my family lived on farms. My dad worked for the power company, but I was just quoted in a magazine recently, and I said that, my mother is someone to whom I've always aspired because she has the work ethic of a U.S. Marine. She is 76 years old, and up until just a few years ago, had 3 jobs and still has 2, right? So she works for a bank here in town, and she is a realtor part-time. So, and cooks Sunday lunch every Sunday for, 12 to 15, kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. So I would say my parents instilled this sense of work ethic in me, and not to mention the military. I did spend 20 years in the U.S. Army, the Army National Guard branch. And so, all those things conspired, I think.
Yeah. What's one mindset or belief that you've learned that maybe you didn't always have, but when you actually embraced it, you really feel that it made a positive difference for you, both as just a human being, on the personal side, but as well in your business? And it could be 2 different ones, but.
Well, good. I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say there are at least 2. Yeah. The first one is failure's only failure if you quit. Otherwise, it's just feedback. Failure's, it's just feedback. So take that temporary setback, take what you learned from that temporary setback, and adjust your course slightly and keep going, and then take the next feedback. Fail fast, fail inexpensively, fail often, and you'll ultimately get to success. So it's only failure if you quit. That's the first one. The second one is, I believe everybody has a calling. I believe everyone was uniquely created to do something great in the world. And for some people, their vocation is their calling. My wife was a nurse practitioner. My father-in-law was a pastor. My daughters are neonatal nurses. My son-in-law is a physician. They get to go to work every day and achieve their purpose in life, fulfill their calling, and earn their living at the same time. Other people, and I put myself in this category, their vocation supports their calling if they can figure out the connection. And I was probably 42 before I realized that connection. I was working as a senior VP in a large marketing data technology company. I was pretty sure that my God-given calling was not to sell data to marketers trying to better target their consumers. But it wasn't until I really started spending some time thinking about it, hearing what people would say to me when I would speak on leadership or I would speak on organizational change or what have you, team building. And then I had about 500 people across 5 different continents that reported in through my organization. And I realized that because of the feedback that I received from people, that I was fairly uniquely gifted in helping people look at their situation differently, at provoking them to look at things differently. And someone even told me once, said, Jeff, you're a revealer. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting in a meeting with you, I'm in one of your training classes, or my husband and I are out with you and Lori for dinner. You say things that provoke me to look at my situation differently. And so I came to understand that this calling that I had, or this sense of purpose that I had, was to create new insights that inspire people to live and work better. And when I realized that, being the SVP in the marketing firm was a platform for me to fulfill that calling. The work I did every day was not my calling, but the platform that gave me the opportunity to create new insights that inspired people to live and work better. When I was doing that, when I was teaching leadership, when I was facilitating a meeting, a team building exercise, what have you, I could fulfill that calling. And when I realized the connection between those two things, complete and total game changer for me. So I'd say that one's had even a greater impact on me than the failure's only failure if you quit.
Yeah, no, I love those. I think a lot of people, Jeff, what they might do some deep thinking or studying to try and identify that passion or that type of connection, but they don't necessarily act on it. What did you do? Like, if you kind of go back, can you take us through, how did you go from recognizing that connection, which you shared right now, to actually starting to bring that to life in your day-to-day actions? What were some kind of concrete steps that you took that you feel made a difference?
You mentioned a few moments ago about me being a paramedic, and I like to separate the word passion from calling, because I was a paramedic and a respiratory therapist. I was on the helicopter team at one of the top 10 children's hospitals in the country called Arkansas Children's Hospital. I actually received an award from a national organization as the Flight Respiratory Therapist of the Year. And so I was good at it. I was really good at it, but it wasn't my calling. And for a while, I was passionate about it because I loved being in the back of an ambulance, being on a helicopter, high stress, critical scenarios. I loved it, but it wasn't my calling. And so even though I was passionate about it for a period of time, it ultimately wasn't what I was created to do. And then I was asked to step into an instructor position at a medical university because they needed the experience that I had as a pediatric perinatal specialist and trauma specialist. And I began to realize teaching, and didn't know it at the time, but when I reflect back on that, I was only in my early 30s. I began to recognize that I had a gift, and I enjoyed that, and people responded to that, even though I didn't know it at the time. And so I went on to get a couple of graduate degrees. I got a master's of education. I got a doctorate in organizational and leadership and organizational development. In doing that doctorate, I started being asked to do some consulting, where I had the opportunity to do that as well. And so it was really more of an evolution than a revolution. And it wasn't, like I said, until I was 40, 42 or so that I really began to put the pieces together. And so from that point forward, I said, I only want to be in situations where I can have the opportunity to influence and impact people on a wide scale by provoking them to behave or to respond or to act differently than what has gotten them to where they are.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that distinction. And as you know, Jeff, as you're a listener of the podcast that we were just talking about before we record, I really want to make this tangible for the listeners and for people watching as well. So what would you suggest? What have you kind of found as a best practice for those who go, okay, Jeff, that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to find my calling as well. I'd like to better identify and understand that. What would you offer to them in terms of maybe some concrete actions or things that we could just let kind of seep in that they could then use to try and identify that themselves?
Well, I'd tell them right now to hit pause and go get a piece of paper and a pen, right? And once they've got that, they can come back and they can pause as we go along, but draw a vertical line from the top of the page to the bottom of the page and a horizontal line in the middle of the page from the left margin to the right margin. And then up in the upper right-hand corner, write, I am great at. In the upper left-hand corner, upper left. Upper right, write, I love to. In the lower left-hand corner, write, deep in my heart, I should be. And then in the lower right-hand corner, write, if I only have 5 years left to live, I would, right? And then answer those questions. I am great at, and list all the things that you're great at. I love doing, and list all the things you love doing. Or I'm passionate about could be one of the things that you call it. I love or I'm passionate about. In the lower left-hand corner, gosh, I just drew a blank. What did I say in the lower left-hand corner? deep in my heart, I should be doing. And then list all those things and then answer the question, it's only 5 years left to live. And then go back and begin to circle things that appear in multiple quadrants. Just circle, highlight them or do whatever. Identify the things and then pull all of those themes out onto another page and think about them, meditate on them, pray about them, whatever your particular orientation is, and think about what they're telling you, because chances are there's something in there. If you love to do it, if you're great at it, if you feel deep in your heart you should be, and if you only had 5 years left to do, you would, there's something there. And so ask for feedback. Spend some time meditating on those, thinking about those. Ask other people for feedback. Share the notes with them, share the themes, ask them what they think it's telling you about yourself. And then over time, I think you'll begin to see kind of where that calling or that sense of purpose comes into play.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think what we're going to do is maybe put together, if you have, Jeff, we can get one from you, is a one pager with that exercise diagram, and then we can put that in the show notes for everybody to access. Or if you have something like that on your website, we can also direct them over there. But I think that's a really powerful exercise for people to go through. So the other thing, that I noticed, Jeff, is that you're involved in multiple different types of businesses, and you have been over the years. But one thing that it seems that quite often it's not just you. You build a team around you. And for a lot of consultants, as you know, getting started or even at the later stages, they try and do a lot of things themselves and don't necessarily build team. What's kind of your thoughts or the principles and beliefs that you have around building a team? And as you've created businesses, do you start to actually think about adding team members?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Well, so first of all, let's answer the second question first. When do you start thinking about adding team members? And I have every entrepreneur that I work with, and even executives many times that I work with, but particularly entrepreneurs, because they all come to me and they want to do one of two things. They want to earn $100,000 a year in personal income, or they want their company to hit $1 million a year. And so I've developed what I call the 50 and 500 rule. If you go to work on a salary position, the Axiom Corporation where I used to work, they're going to actually plug in 2,080 hours for you for a year's worth of work, right? That's kind of the normal full-time equivalent. Let's just take it to 2,000 because it's easier to calculate. And if we don't use 2,000, it screws up my 50 and 500 analogy. So if someone wants to make $100,000 a year, that's $50 an hour. 100,000 minus 2,000, $50 an hour. If they want their company to make $1 million a year, that's $500 an hour. Their time is worth $500 an hour to their company, and their time is worth $50 an hour to their family or to their household, right? And so if they find themselves routinely doing tasks that are significantly below $50 an hour, they need to find someone, either an outsourced partner or a team member to take that over. If they find themselves spending a significant amount of time doing less than $500 an hour tasks when they are working in their business, then they absolutely need to find someone to help them do that. And so that's kind of when I start thinking about when you need to bring someone on board. Or, the parallel to that is when you start finding that you just can't keep up with it all and you start missing meetings or you start making mistakes and your quality of life suffers. You don't get the downtime that you need and what have you to go hunting or cycling or whatever it is that you love to do. In terms of the philosophy around building a team, what I have found, and one thing that we didn't talk about is the reason that I went from the world of healthcare over into business is because my doctoral dissertation was in studying the differences between the top 1% of performers and the middle 50%. What is it that differentiates those top rock star performers from the masses, the people who we have to have at work every day, but are not going to really, blow the ceiling off?
Tell us, Jeff, we're all ears.
Well, and so the interesting thing about it is if you take those things and I've built models in multiple businesses where we looked at actually high performers in those businesses and we looked at what they do differently. I've done it in the military. I've done it in higher education institutions. I've done it in professions, and I've done it in businesses. It all boils down to how well we balance two things: results and relationships. Some of us are more results oriented. I would be that person. And so if we focus on results at the expense of relationships, we'll be wildly successful very, very quickly until we alienate everyone around us whom we're responsible for helping us maintain those results. If we focus on relationships at the expense of results, people will love us. Man, that Standridge is a great guy, until they lose respect for us because we can't do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. And in both instances, we lose them both. And so it's a constant walking of this tightrope. And so there are competencies and behaviors that if we're a relationship-oriented person, we need to develop to be more results-oriented. If we're a results-oriented person, there are skills, disciplines, and competencies we need to develop to be more relational. And so going back to the team building, I actually hired someone early in my days as an executive to be the eyes and ears because I wasn't very empathetic. On a scale of 1 to 99, on a scale of empathy, I scored a 6. And my wife congratulated me because she thought it was much higher than what she thought it was going to come in at. But my point is, until I developed those skills and those capabilities, I needed someone to hold me accountable. And so I had a woman who worked for me, and I said she was the reason that I wasn't fired the first 5 years I was there. Her name was Brenda. We called her Bryn. And she would come in and she would say, that town hall you had today? And I'd say, yeah. And she'd say, well, when you said this? And I'd say, yeah. And she said, well, this is what some people heard. And I would go, ooh, that's not what I wanted them to hear at all. And so she would help me work through some of those issues until I developed that emotional intelligence and emotional maturity to be able to do those things myself.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching Program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
But Jeff, you're actually open enough to identify that was a weakness of yours, right? A lot of people wouldn't even see that as a weakness. They would just kind of keep blazing forward. Where did that come from? I mean, would that come as a result of people telling you that you weren't good at it? Or is it just you knew deep down inside? Because I think for many of us, right? I mean, when we're looking to grow or to improve, the people who tend to see the greatest results and overall success recognize they can't do it all themselves, and they look for mentors, coaches, whatever it might be to support them. That's what you were doing in that situation. What are your thoughts on that? Like, where did that come from?
First of all, I had the good fortune of working in Axiom Corporation, which was a high-performance team-based culture. It was one of Fortune's best places to work perennially for multiple years. I had a great leader who would effectively just put the mirror up in front of me. And when I would fail, she would kind of, put that mirror up in front of me and help me walk through why I failed. When I would alienate someone, or I would, be so results focused that I might drive a wedge relationally between me and someone else, she would help me recognize that. And then she'd say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And she would talk me through how to go do that. So she invested a ton in me. And she's not listening to this podcast, but I'm going to flip it to her because her name's Cindy Childers and I want her to hear this. She had a huge impact on me. And even, other coworkers, I believe that the responsibility of mentorship is on the mentee, not on the mentor. And so, companies, in my experience, do a much better job of mentorship programs when they teach employees how to go and find mentors and how to engage those mentors and how to leverage the knowledge and wisdom that they gain and how to then be a mentor themselves when asked. And most most likely it never results in a conversation or a question of, will you be my mentor? It's going and buying somebody a cup of coffee and saying, hey, I noticed how you did so-and-so, so-and-so. Would you mind if I picked your brain about that? That's mentoring. And I had a number of other folks whom I reached out to, and I had a number of other folks that came to me and said, hey, can I give you a little feedback on the meeting that we had today? And in that instance, they mentored me as well. So I had the great culture to grow up in as a business executive, coming from an academic health sciences center when I went over to Axiom Corporation, and that really played a lot. And then, I just leadership's about being vulnerable, and I've just watched that over time.
Definitely. So Jeff, I mean, you've now worked with many companies across multiple industries. When it comes to growth, to innovation, to improvement, which are areas that you do a lot of work in, what have you seen across all these different industries and companies that tend to be kind of the most common amongst all of them? If there is typically like low-hanging fruit when you go into working with a new organization, what do you keep seeing over and over that typically is a great area to focus on for quick wins and improvements that people who might be listening right now and taking this in could benefit from kind of analyzing their own situation?
That's a great question. For the majority of our practice, and our company is called Innovation Junkie, and the majority of our practice focuses on strategic, sustainable growth. And so not just rapid burst growth that you can't sustain, but strategic and sustainable growth. It may be explosive, but it's explosive in a very strategic and sustainable way. And we find the two pillars that really shore that up are, number one, the effectiveness of your leadership, all the way up to the CEO and all the way down to the lowest level leader who has hiring, firing, and compensation responsibility. So the effectiveness of your leadership and the organizational culture that you have. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about the culture of how success is rewarded, how feedback is rewarded, how vulnerability is rewarded, how mistakes are rewarded, all of those things. So those are the kind of the pillars that shore up this strategic, sustainable growth. And then there's, number one, when you start thinking about the tactics under those strategic girders, if you will, it's, do you have a plan? What is your plan for growth? And does that plan have a specific destination somewhere in the future, 3 to 5 years out, at which you aspire to arrive? And then do you know what you've got to do over those 5 years to get there? And what do you have to do in the next 12 months to get 20% of the way there? And then what are you looking at on a daily, weekly basis in order to get there, to monitor your progress, to keep it between the ditches, if you will? That is a fundamental element. It's not a 3-ring binder, 4-inch plan that someone spends months putting together and then they stick it on the shelf and they dust it off every 2 years. It is a cogent plan that says, this is where we're going, and this is precisely how we're going to get there, and this is how we're going to monitor our progress. And then, oh, by the way, here's who's responsible for what. We're talking 3 to 4 pages generally. The other thing that I see is the willingness to innovate. The only requirement for innovation to occur is some form of constraint. Without a constraint, there's no need to innovate. We'll just do what we've always done. But the constraint of a global pandemic, the constraint of a down market, the constraint of a new competitor moving into town, something happens that changes the status quo that forces us to think about innovation. And innovation is just new ideas that change either the transaction cost of doing business or that pursue a more pleasant way of doing things than in the past or present. And so we need to look at those constraints around us and say, what's it telling us about our business? What are the game changers that we could employ? And so having a systematic process to innovate and to ask yourself those difficult questions. So having that strategic growth plan, being willing to ask yourself the tough questions and to recognize constraints so that you can innovate. And then finally, having a methodology for execution and being willing to assign accountabilities, to have a monitoring process, to have a cadence, and to follow up on that cadence religiously, even when the building may be on fire, so to speak.
Does innovation have any size, where it doesn't work? I think a lot of consultants hear the word innovation and they think about their clients. They think about larger, more established organizations. But the kind of innovation that you're talking about sounds like is just as applicable for a company of 1, 5, or 10 people as it could be to a company of 50, 500, or 5,000. I mean, any thoughts or experiences in terms of how innovation can be applied to the smaller, either independent or small consulting firm?
Yeah, so there are really 3 levels of innovation. There's incremental innovation, and that's where you take an existing process, existing product, or existing service, and you make it incrementally better by questioning the status quo, questioning how it's performing today and measuring how it's performing. That's incremental innovation. And over time, that can yield phenomenal results. We've heard the stories of the airlines that took, one French fry off of their plates and saved hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a year. So incremental innovation. Then there's breakthrough innovation, where we have a new product or technology within an existing business model, or a new business model around an existing technology. So you think about product extensions of Coke, Coke Lime, Coke Vanilla, Coke Zero. You think about Gillette, that started off with a one bladed razor, then it went to 2 blades, then 3 blades, then the swivel head, then the ergonomic handle, et cetera. Those are making improvements to, within an existing business model, newer technologies. Or you think about the iPhone, right? Mobile phones had existed for years, but Apple built a new technology within an existing business model. You think about Dollar Shave Club. They took existing technology and razors and shaving cream and what have you, and they put a new business model around it. That's breakthrough technology.
What about for, let's say, in professional services? So I know, you have clients and you people in your network who run agencies or either consultancies, accounting firms, whatever it might be. So for the professional service firm that doesn't have necessarily a product, but more their product is their expertise, what kind of innovation examples come to mind there? Or where do you think people should be looking to create more innovation and better results?
Well, I think I should only fall back on personal example and think about the work that we've done over the course of the last year in working with you guys in the Clarity Coaching Program, right? I've shown this slide with starburst all over the slide of all of the things that my partners and I are good at, because we have years and years and years of experience, as you can see from the gray hair here. But the fact of the matter is, it was not scalable, and it was not sustainable, and it was not strategic. And so we stepped back and we innovated our business model, and we innovated our product packaging, or our productization, if you will. And we built a strategic growth diagnostic that we can administer to companies now at a very relatively low kind of discovery offer level. And it's producing some fairly significant results or potential results. And we're able to come in and say, oh, by the way, and here's our solution stack that matches the results that you want to deliver. And so by doing that, and we're not quite there yet, we're continuing to innovate it and we're continuing to refine it, but looking at the way you deliver service and asking yourself, how can you generate sustainable strategic growth in your organization without having to add hours to your calendar, or without having to add people every time you want to add $1 of revenue?
Yeah. Jeff, it's been a real honor and pleasure working with you in the Clarity Coaching Program. And you gave an amazing presentation to the community about your process of how you've done that. And I think that it really resonated. A lot of people have reached out to you, right, as a result, and just the feedback was pretty tremendous. And I think it really resonated because a lot of people have that exact same challenge, right? They show up with a lot of expertise and experience and skills and a lot of things that they could offer to the marketplace, but they're not as focused as they could be, right? Because they're concerned about, well, am I not going to lose some opportunity if I get focused? I could do all these other things. Could you just talk a little bit more about kind of that process of what you did within your business? Any resistance that you kind of faced or felt as you went through that, and just kind of compare what things looked like a little bit more before and how they look now in terms of your offerings?
Yeah. So before, we had, and I'm pulling up just my slide here so I can look at it from what I've presented to you guys. We had everything from innovation training and executive coaching and innovation program management and leadership development and strategic growth planning and financial innovation, or a fractional innovation officer rather, and even more. All of those things that we love to do. And quite frankly, we're pretty darn good at. But in the end, none of them were connected to the other. There was no logical client journey. And so we had to step back and think about it from the client's perspective and how would they want to engage with us. And so we built a kind of a stair-step model that says, well, here's generally where clients come in. They say, I need a strategic growth plan, or they say, I need an innovation sprint, or need you to help us think about innovation. And so now what we do is we say, well, you know what, we can do that and we can get you some results there, but how about we back down to the start and let's do like a physician would do, rather than walking in and saying, I need an antibiotic because I've got a runny nose. The physician's going to say, well, let me just step back and take a look at a few things. So we step them back, or try to step them back, and have them go through this diagnostic that's a fairly intensive diagnostic. It only takes about 30 minutes. And we usually have the C-suite, normally 5 to 7 executives in the company, or 3 to 5 if it's a smaller company. And it produces some very rich results for us to then sit down with them and say, here's what the diagnostic said. And oh, by the way, this was not us diagnosing your business. This was you diagnosing your business against a set of best practices in 6 different areas. And so based upon what the consensus of your own executive team says, here's what you need to do in these areas, and here's the potential financial return back to you. And so if we were in your shoes, here's the way we would stack a solution in there to solve the issues that you have. And oh, by the way, that stacked solution that we provide them is our solution stack. And we might plug them in at different levels in that solution stack, but we know where to plug them in a way that's going to create the greatest result with the least amount of human expenditure and fanfare.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the presentation, this is available to all clients, recording section of the coaching site, but it was, I think, just amazing how you demonstrated the value to that client, right, through the information they provided you, and comparing that to benchmarks in the industry. It becomes a very compelling, reason to move forward. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that again and giving us so much detail around it. Jeff, where can people go? Where should they go to learn more about you and your work and everything that you guys have going on? Because again, not only are you involved in teaching, you're an active investor, you work with companies in your community kind of as a mentor and take them through a program, and then you work with entrepreneurs and CEOs and leaders. So you got a lot going on, but where's the best place for people to go to learn some of that good, Jeff Standridge?
Well, 2 places would be, number one, innovationjunkie.com, and that's innovationjunkie.com, or jeffstandridge.com. And that's JEFF, the second F silent, jeffstandridge.com. And so they can get my books there, the Innovators Field Guide, the Top Performers Field Guide, and reach out to me directly. I would love to talk to them. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'd love nothing more than to connect on LinkedIn. I communicate with a lot of people there as well. So,
yeah, and I got to tell you guys, I mean, as you can likely pick up from this conversation, not only does Jeff really know what he's doing. I got his books. You sent them over when we started working together, and I really appreciate you sending those books over. Those are great. But he's also a heck of a great guy, a lot of fun. So thanks, Jeff, for coming on here today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and I hope people will reach out. I look forward to talking to you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.